Hi, welcome to Life Abroad. How is it so far? Are you surprised by anything? Is it more or less different than you thought it would be? Today we're going to talk a little bit about culture and how to make sense of those differences using a cultural framework. So what exactly is culture? While most students say they want to study abroad because they want to learn about another culture, they often don't realize just how complex this notion is and how difficult it really is to learn another culture. The word culture is often used to refer to different kinds of things. First, it's often used to refer to a place and a people who are different than you. This kind of exotic and almost mythological sense is what a lot of people think of when they think of international travel. Different architecture, sights, sounds, smells, taste, and the sort of living embodiment of and presence of a history and a people who are different than you. There's also another meaning of culture, which really has to do with the way that we're socialized to think and act and behave. This notion of culture encompasses the architecture and the other visible parts that we see, but it really is more referring to the underlying attitudes and values and behaviors of a group of people that embodies their way of life. This notion of culture is what I want to spend some time talking with you about today. So when we talk about culture in this framework, what we're talking about is the shared attitudes, values, and beliefs of a group of people. Culture is pervasive, and we're so immersed in our own culture that we often don't realize that our thoughts, behaviors, norms, our way of life is in fact a culture. We think it's simply human nature. But in reality, nearly every aspect of our way of life, our way of interacting in the world, our behaviors, our attitudes, our values, they've all been taught to us. And they're reinforced unconsciously by our society, by the people that we're around. So one of the first steps in cultural learning is recognizing that we have a culture ourselves that has been taught to us, and then validating that there are other cultures that have been taught to other people, and acknowledging that these are really just different ways of living, not a right or a wrong way, just different ways. But it takes more than just recognizing that there are different ways to be a truly intercultural person. Because our own culture is so ingrained in us, it really takes a lot of effort and time to learn about another culture. I mean, just think about it. You've had years and years of experience in your own culture being told, taught what to do by parents, teachers, peers, society, and now you've probably finally just figured it out how to be successful, and you have to learn all about another one. It really takes a lot of effort to uncover the degree and the depth of the things that have been taught and socialized to us. And it's for this reason that it takes a lot of time to really understand another culture. We have to learn about cultural differences and open our mind to these differences and adapt our behavior in order to become really interculturally competent.
So what are some of these differences that we can look for and be open to? One way to conceptualize aspects of culture is to think of an iceberg. There are surface-level, visible components, which are what people often latch onto when they think about differences in culture. Food, dress, celebrations, sports, and language. But below the surface is what we call deep culture, the deep-seated, subconscious norms, ideals, values, and expectations. These can include communication styles and rules, and the meanings behind these aspects, notions of courtesy, friendship, cleanliness, and beauty, concepts of self, time, justice, and roles, attitudes towards different age groups, attitudes towards work and authority, and relationships with nature, animals, and human conditions, and approaches to religion, marriage, family, problem solving, and more. These deep-level cultural elements tend to be more influential to people, but are often harder to figure out.
So what happens when you cross cultures? Well, sometimes you might notice the differences, other times you might not. But either way, there are differences that you need to adapt to. And because you've been raised and immersed in your own culture your whole life, you've come to believe that the way that you act and think is normal. It's correct, and you may be quick to judge others who are different than you in really negative ways. You may think that they're dumb, rude, ignorant, naive. You also probably don't realize that you're being judged in negative ways yourself as you continue to act in the ways that you're used to in your home culture and not in the ways of your host culture. You may not realize the underlying differences. You may think that people are being purposefully rude to you. And then you may begin to withdraw from interacting because of this negativity, meaning that you never really get a chance to fully learn and immerse yourself in the new culture. So, how do you move away from judgment and into cultural awareness and intercultural competence? There are three components that I want to talk about: a knowledge component, an attitude component, and a behavioral component. The knowledge component involves getting new knowledge, getting new information about the place. This can include learning about their history, politics, society, folklore, rites and rituals, their environment, and anything else that influences the way that they act. The attitude is what I call mindfulness. It's about developing open-mindedness and attentiveness to being in tune with others and being flexible. Finally, the behavioral component involves acquiring skills such as intercultural communication skills and culturally appropriate behaviors that will allow you to act and interact in culturally sensitive ways. These concepts are not difficult to understand, but they can be difficult to implement because our own culture is so ingrained in us. Our own way of life is such a part of who we are. So, cultural intelligence and intercultural competence is largely gained by doing. You have to get out and interact and practice and make mistakes, learn from those mistakes, and keep trying. So what I encourage you to do is to take advantage of opportunities to interact. And I'll give you opportunities to interact through assignments and activities, but hopefully you're just doing this anyway by being in your new culture. You have to get out there and try new ways of interacting, learn new sets of knowledge, open your heart and your mind to new ways of thinking, and watch and observe and practice the things that you see. Second, cultural intelligence and intercultural competence comes by taking the time to dissect and reflect on what you're seeing and doing. And so I also encourage you to take time to process and reflect. Again, I'll give you ideas about how to do this, and I hope that this becomes something that you just learn to do naturally on your own as well. I'm excited that you've taken advantage of the opportunity to spend time abroad. I hope that these videos will give you more insight into cultural learning and will give you an opportunity to develop cultural intelligence and intercultural competence.